Hello and welcome to The Take. I'm your host, Chesley McNeil. Each weekday, we're looking at stories, making headlines, and bringing experts from our community to give their take. Here's a look back at some of the top takes from this week and how those in the know are seeing those stories that impact you. For the next 90 days, each nation will cut back on tariffs to each other's country by 115%. That means the rate on Chinese goods coming into the United States plummets to 30%, while the rate on U.S. goods going into China falls to 10%. The two sides have also set up meetings to continue discussions on these trade deals. Earlier today, the U.S. Treasury Secretary seemed pleased at the outcome of this weekend's talks.
Throughout the trade process, we have had a plan, we have a process in place, and now with the Chinese, after this weekend, we have a mechanism for continued talks. So, process, plan, and mechanism.
All right, here now to talk a little bit more about the deal and how it will impact us here in the metro Atlanta area is friend of the show, Professor Sina Galara. Good to see you again.
Hi, good morning.
All right, let's talk about this big deal, right? And tell us, this was one of the highest rates that we saw as far as the tariffs go to one country and another. And now we're seeing it down to the lowest.
Yes, this was one of the best news we could have gotten for the U.S. and Georgia as a very supply chain heavy state in the United States. The cutback on tariffs are substantial, and even though it's just a pause, it's a very strong signal that both parties are looking to drop these tariffs substantially. Seems like the 10% is the bottom, or at least that's what the administration states, but still the previous rates was essentially unsustainable, and what they're working towards in the agreement is a testament to the notion that none of the sides of this trade war want or can tolerate extremely high tariff rates, and so this is a fantastic news that we got today.
China seemed to be the focus of this. How much do we rely on China for goods?
Well, substantially. Well, the United States as a whole imports north of $400 billion of goods from China. And that's a substantial portion of the U.S. economy. And it's important to realize that it's not all consumer goods. Some of them are inputs to other manufacturing processes. So there might be many domestic products that also depend on Chinese imports. Now, when you also look at Georgia, that's also is a supply chain gateway, and it's one of the most important states as it comes to international trade. We export $50 billion of goods and import about 150 billion annually. A lot of that from China. China is one of the biggest trade partners of Georgia. And so a lot of the state's economy depends on trade functioning and a lot of goods coming in and going out. It's been estimated that 800,000 jobs depend on all this supply chain. So, any trouble there is bad news for Georgia, and any improvement is fantastic news.
Yeah, we'll take the fantastic news. We're also hearing some rippling effects like the stock futures starting to soar and the U.S. dollar starting to tick up as well, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So markets have been really, really terrified because of the possible effect of these tariffs. I've said many times this: if these levels, the old levels, actually are sustained, it could be posing a significant recession threat, and perhaps because of that reason, we are seeing fast resolution. At least there is a lot of appetite to get to deals. Of course, we don't know exactly what will happen in the future, but it seems like there's very strong intent to reach deals and reduce these tariffs, and it's well understood that they're not sustainable.
Do you think where we are now could be sustainable? As you just mentioned, 90 days for this 10% deal, 30% deal. Do you think that that's going to hold, or do you think it may rise back up a little bit, or could go back to where it was?
All we are hearing, we're hearing very clear signs from the administration that they are emphasizing that 10% is their floor. So I would have wanted that floor to be zero, but it seems like 10 is going to be what we have to live with for some time. And so we will definitely have some effect. Not all of these tariffs will go will be reversed, but 10% is much better than 100% or 145%, right? So we will have some marginal impact on prices, marginal impact on economic activity, but at a much more favorable rate.
Tens of millions of dollars of Georgia's budget may soon be going to people who've had criminal convictions overturned after a bill to compensate wrongly convicted Georgians quietly passed the legislature in the final hours of the session. 11Alive News investigator Savannah Levins joins me now on the take to talk to me about this. And Savannah, what can you tell us about this bill?
Well, Chesley, it is something exonerees and advocates like the Georgia Innocence Project have been pushing for years now. Georgia has long been one of 11 states with no law on the books to compensate citizens who are wrongly convicted of a crime. So basically, if you end up serving time in prison for a crime you did not commit, the courts overturn it and they release you. The way things are currently set up, you're pretty much just sent on your way. Now, you could try to get an individual resolution passed through the legislature to be compensated, but it was rare and honestly really hard for that to even happen. And this bill that has now passed establishes a uniform process to pay exonerees. The bill compensates $75,000 per year spent in prison for a wrongful conviction and an extra $25,000 for each year on death row. Now, 11Alive News Investigates calculated if each of Georgia's 51 exonerees since 1989 pursues compensation for their collective 610 years lost, the state would owe around $46 million, Chesley.
Wow. So, Savannah, tell us where this money comes from.
That's a very good question. So the money would come from the state budget. I spoke with Christina Cribbs, senior attorney for the Georgia Innocence Project, and asked her about whether she thinks the state budget even has the capacity to pay out all that money. Here's what she said.
I think the state budget that they approved for this year was around $37 billion. So there's a lot of money there. And there's a surplus as well. So even if it's $46 million, that's kind of a drop in the bucket as far as the entire state budget goes.
All right, so what would the compensation process look like? Does the exoneree just get the money automatically?
No, Chesley, it would not be automatic. So basically they would have to apply. Exonerees have 3 years from July 1st or 3 years from the date of their exoneration, whichever is later, to file their compensation claims. Now, they have to submit that claim to the Georgia Office of State Administrative Hearings. Now, that court usually deals with things like state disability benefits, child support, etc. So dealing with wrongful convictions and honestly criminal issues in general, going to be new for these judges. And since the process will likely require an attorney familiar with that court, the bill does also allow for exonerees to have their attorney's fees compensated too. Now, the DA who prosecuted the original case and the Attorney General will be given an opportunity to file an appeal against each person's compensation claim if they want. Otherwise, the admin judge will just go ahead and make that final call themselves. Now, Chesley, the governor has not officially signed this bill into law yet. Unless he vetoes it by this Wednesday's deadline, it will automatically become law, though. So, unless he takes some action, it's going to automatically happen.
I know you mentioned in your story that it kicks in like after a year, you get so much. After this year, you get so much. Does it make any room for those that spend less than a year time in jail?
For less than a year, it would be basically grandfathered in. So whatever the applicable amount per month would be. But most people who have spent time in prison, Chesley, for wrongful convictions, it's a multiple years thing. I think the average is, 5+ years. Some have been in prison 10, 20, 30, even 40 years or more. So definitely a lot of money that these folks stand to get.
The Trump administration realignment of Washington, D.C. bureaucracy continues. Over the weekend, Shara Perlmutter, the Registrar of Copyright and Director of the U.S. Copyright Office, was fired. This came shortly after the release of a report by the Copyright Office on artificial intelligence and its implications for copyright law. No official response from the White House, but we do know that Perlmutter received an email on Sunday simply saying, "Your position as the Registrar of Copyrights and Director of U.S. Copyright Office is terminated effective immediately." Here to talk more about the implications of this is Kristen Roberts. She's internationally known as an intellectual property attorney who deals regularly with the specialized fields of trademark and copyright. Kristen, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. Talk to me about this. A bit of a shocker, perhaps?
For a lot of us in this world in particular, yes, this was a shocker. It came on the heels of not just this AI report release, but also on the heels of firing the Librarian of Congress, who was already in her last term, appointed by the Obama administration. And this role is actually really important. It sounds like a lot of government drama, but it does impact the everyday American, particularly because so many Americans are creators. And the Copyright Office is responsible for not just issuing copyright registrations, but also helping Congress as it relates to interpreting law, as it relates to copyright law, which is part of the Constitution.
Talk to me about her job in particular, and by getting rid of her, does that eliminate the entire office, or how does this work?
The office is a very small office, so it doesn't get rid of the office entirely, but it does throw it into upheaval. And this is a very neutral position, and it's looking very political when it comes to this termination because it aligns with the termination of the Librarian of Congress as well as this release of this report. And there's been no reason given. Shira Perlmutter is an incredibly well-versed individual. She's incredibly qualified. She has a law degree. There was really no reason for this termination to occur.
Do you think that AI report that we mentioned played a role in this at all?
I definitely think that it could play a role. There were some things in this report. Now, keep in mind, this is not just Shira Perlmutter's report. This report was over years. It included tens of thousands of people's opinions, including practitioners like myself. We were all asked to submit our opinions, come to town halls and speak about this. So this has been ongoing for a really long time. But there were some things in this report that were potentially concerning for AI companies as it relates to their use of copyrighted material to train their AI platforms. So there could have been some pressure, but we won't know because we weren't behind those doors.
Yeah, one group who's spoken out about this move was the American Federation of Musicians Union. It posted on Facebook this weekend saying, quote, "will gravely harm the entire copyright community." What's your take on that?
I absolutely agree. I think that this is something that we don't want right now. There's a lot of cases involving AI that are making their way through the courts, and having a really strong leadership position in the Copyright Office is crucial to help sort of translate what's going on and also provide some insight, particularly to Congress, who needs this right now. Is
it more like music affected by this, or you said we are creators here in the United States? Is it more about music and maybe movies, that kind of thing?
This affects anything that is content related, that is fixed in a tangible medium. So anything you see, write, record, sing, listen to, anything that is considered a creative work is going to be impacted.
Wow. How do you see the situation unfolding?
Well, it depends on what happens next. If they have somebody in mind, we're probably going to get some interim person. My hope is that this person has the same qualifications and at least the same amount of experience that Shira Perlmutter had, because her experience was invaluable when it comes to interpreting what's happening and what's unfolding right now, particularly in the AI space.
Grads right here in the metro Atlanta area have a bit of an advantage, believe it or not. Wallet Hub compared relative market strength and overall livability for more than 180 cities in the U.S. to help recent college grads find the best place for budding their careers. And Atlanta came out on top, believe it or not, followed by Orlando and Tampa, Florida, Austin, Texas. Pearl City, just outside of Honolulu, Hawaii, was last. Nobody goes there to work, right? They go there to enjoy themselves, I think. Here to share what sets the ATL apart is Tammy Mifflin. She is a career coach based right here in Atlanta. Tammy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chesley, for having me.
All right, so what sets the ATL apart from all these other places for launching your career?
So Atlanta is a national hub for Fortune 500 headquarters, home to giants like the Home Depot, Delta, and Truist Financial. For ambitious professionals, this means accelerated promotion tracks and direct access to the leadership development programs, the kind of opportunities that are hard to find in smaller markets. You also have our city that consistently outpaces the nation in job creation and wage growth. With unemployment rates regularly below the national average and a steady flux of corporate investment, Atlanta offers a strong financial prospect for new and experienced talent. We also have Atlanta's job market isn't just for executives. There's a surge, as you stated, in entry-level roles for entry grads as established companies expand and new businesses open their doors. When you add in the cost of living that's manageable compared to cities like New York or San Francisco, Atlanta becomes an ideal starting point, especially for those recent grads. And the ATL has an international appeal. With the world's busiest airport connecting Atlanta to over 200 destinations, multinational firms are drawn here for the reach and connectivity. That global link means professionals gain exposure to international business and a richly diverse, multicultural workplace. This is the kind of environment where job seekers are more likely to find a better cultural fit than anywhere else that they go. So that's why Atlanta is definitely a launching pad. All
right, Tammy, don't keep us in suspense. I teach at Kennesaw State University. Got a lot of kids watching this show. They want to know, what are those jobs specifically? Do you know?
Yes. So right now, the vibrant ecosystem of global giants and startup make fintech and healthcare IT especially hot right now. It's driven by billions in venture capital, which makes the industry stronger than most markets. You also have the film industry, which is your entertainment and creative industry. Thanks to Georgia's substantial film credit, this means there's expanded opportunities because companies are filming movies and TV shows year-round. You also have your Atlanta's healthcare and life science and biotech scene, which is expanding quickly. We have our Emory Healthcare, Wellstar, and biotech incubators around Tech Square. The region needs everyone from healthcare administrators to lab researchers and IT professionals, making it a magnet for talent in these fields. And we can't forget that our city is a logistics powerhouse that is still fast with growth due to its geographic position and the presence of companies like UPS, which makes logistics and transportation an excellent job sector and option for job seekers. There's strong hiring in supply chain analysts, warehouse supervisors, distribution managers, and especially as e-commerce keeps booming, you're going to find more of these opportunities. And lastly, go ahead.
One of the things that Wallet Hub said is that part of Atlanta's charm is that it's a fun city and probably best ranked for singles. Do you believe that? Do you agree with that?
I do. So, part of working is having an after 5 life, right? So you want to make sure that as you're coming in and you're chasing your dreams, you want to be serious about that play. You'll want a city where you find rewards like tacos, tunes, and trivia nights. Today's job seekers aren't just weighing salaries and titles. They're scouting after work. It's all about that work-life integration. It's fuel for creativity, connection, and long-term retention. So if you're going to work hard, you need a city that helps you play harder, and that, of course, is the ATL.
One bill the governor has signed is the DistractionFree Education Act. This bans personal electronic devices, including cell phones, for students in kindergarten through 8th grade during the school day. The ban will take effect no later than July 1st of next year, giving schools time to develop and implement some of those policies. Here now to talk with us more about how the school districts will implement this policy is Vidalia Turner, president of the Georgia Federation for Teachers. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning.
All right.
We're excited about this bill.
Yes, talk to me about it. What were your thoughts?
A long time coming, but finally is here. And in fact, what would happen is that in elementary schools and in middle schools beginning school year 2026, those cell phones will be collected in the morning and they would be passed back out at the end of the day. We are hoping that we can get that bill expanded for high schools.
Yeah.
Teachers and educators are overjoyed, and some parents are also.
Good deal, good deal. What do you see as the biggest practical challenge in enforcing this new cell phone ban?
Collecting the phones, and the districts are going to have to do that because there are hundreds of kids, sometimes thousands of kids in a school. And of course, just like any other contraband, schools are challenged with collecting and securing whatever they have to secure. So it's going to be a cost involved and training involved in new equipment.
Would that be those pouches, or how will the phones be stored? Do you know?
Well, right now we're looking at pouches, individual pouches, and then another secured place somewhere in the building. But all of that's to be worked out.
So the schools must adopt the policy by, is it January 1st by 2026? Is that what we're hearing?
Well, yeah, they're going to have to, they have to implement this in August 2026. So that between now and then, they're really going to have to do some catch up to make sure that they have everything in place so they can secure those phones and pass those phones back out to the proper owners So that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. Do you think it's enough time, really? I mean, we're talking about 7 months here. Is that enough time to make all this happen?
Probably not, but schools do magic every day.
I do understand that. Walk me through it. I mean, what would be the? I guess you also have to have to indicate or implement some type of policy if kids are caught. I guess with phones. What do you do then?
Yeah.
You know, how do you implement that, or how do you see that going?
All of that should be worked out. I'm sure that the parents will be notified. More than likely, schools and school districts will have something for the parent or guardian and or child to sign. We think it's best that the child just keep the phone at home because we can see a lot of problems and hiccups in implementing devices that many kids are actually addicted to. And some parents actually think the child has a right to, even in the classroom. So the administration is going to have to square it. And let me say this also to the public. Teachers and administrators really aren't off during the summer. People think they are. So this is something added to their plates now, but we're taking it delightfully so that the administration and the teachers can work through this. I can see kids continuously now that get through those evolved machines, and they may go off, a lot of them coming through at one time, and that's in order not to bring weapons in. Sometimes they'll have pipes, and then the teachers are supposed to be trained. But when you have, and they are, some of them are trained, some of them are not, because a lot is being put upon our districts, so that the districts will have to have special training.
Okay. All right. Is this also going to, real quick question here, will it change the way that you guys will have to teach? I know that you probably have been implementing cell phone use and maybe in some curriculum. Will it have to change at all?
No, I don't see anything having to change except children and having to be engaged more with their minds and using their cognitive skills. Social platforms are good, but it's a two-sided coin, and a great distraction happens to be the social media and those devices in those children's hands.
On Sunday, hundreds of flights at Hartsfield-Jackson were delayed due to a ground stoppage because of a runway equipment issue, followed by severe weather. Disruptions affected both arriving and departing flights. Meanwhile, the situation is amplified at Newark's Liberty International Airport. It's been experiencing significant issues recently, primarily related to air traffic control and staffing shortages. These problems have led to widespread flight delays and cancellations, causing considerable disruptions for travelers. On Sunday's Meet the Press, the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy tried to address some of these safety concerns.
The system is old, right? This is a system that's 25 at best, sometimes 50 years old. The Congress and the country haven't paid attention to it, right? They expect it to work. And so now I think the lights are blinking, the sirens are turning, and they're saying, listen, we have to fix this.
Yes, we do. Here now to make some sense of it is Dr. Lori Garrow with the Georgia Tech's College of Engineering School of Civil and Engineering and Environmental Engineering. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's talk about these hiccups at these airports. What's your take on it?
Say it again, sorry.
What's your take on these hiccups at these airports, in particular Newark?
Yeah, so I think that we're starting to see sort of the beginning of infrastructure stresses, right? Over the last 20 years, we have, or 20, 30, 40 years, we've just seen increasing growth in the number of passengers, number of flights going into the airports, and we're reaching capacity. So we don't have a lot of room when something goes wrong to really recover from all of the delays.
How big of an infrastructure problem is this going to be? Like, all right, so we're starting up at Newark. We're probably starting to see some at some other airports as well. I believe Philadelphia had some issues as well over the weekend. How major of a problem is this going to be?
So Newark is a little bit isolated because they used to have the air traffic controllers in New York, and then they moved them to Philadelphia. But one of the systems that was basically, presenting the radar where the planes are still was in New York. So they had to transmit that data down to Philly. And that's where the issue came in, was that they didn't have as many high-speed telecommunication lines, fiber lines going down. And then when you run fiber, where they did have it, the systems are so old, they had to slow the speeds down. So there was basically communication issues happening. But we don't normally move, controllers from one area to the other. So in that case, I think that particular problem will be isolated.
So it's more of a technical issue more so than a staff shortage issue, or is it both?
It's both. It's both. Duffy noted that there were more than 3,000 air traffic controllers short right now. One of the challenges has been during COVID, I like to say never before have we seen the airline industry shrink demand so quickly and then ramp back up so quickly. And it was hard to respond to that. So the training that happens out in Oklahoma, the training center there was understaffed. So they weren't getting as many air traffic controllers back into trained up to basically be able to handle this whiplash effect that came back.
Do you foresee?
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nope. Go ahead.
Do you foresee this being a widespread problem? In particular, here at Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta, what would it be also some infrastructure issues down the road for us as well?
Yeah, so the way I like to think about it is that if you're working on aging technology, you have to put in really high safety margins. So imagine you're traveling on the road and you know how they say leave 2 seconds between you and the car ahead of you. Well, in aging infrastructure, you say leave 10 seconds between you and the car ahead of you. So we can make things safer if we move to newer technologies, increase the number of planes coming through while maintaining safety if we were to upgrade. So the more people flying, the more planes we have in the sky, the bigger the problem's going to get unless we move to some of the newer technologies. So
we have a big holiday coming up, right? Memorial Day is coming up. A lot of people taking vacation, that kind of thing. Do you anticipate a lot of disruptions due to that volume of people going and flying?
Well, I haven't seen the weather forecast, and that's usually the most volatile this time of year, so we can't really predict thunderstorms. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but as long as we don't have thunderstorms, I think we're good. But if we have weather, then, expect delays, yeah.
What would be the priority, real quickly? Would the priority be the people or the equipment?
I think it's both, but I think right now probably the people on air traffic control is the biggest issue to get more people trained up. And that's not an easy process. It takes between 1 to 3 years to train an individual. Yeah, 1 to 3 years to train an individual to basically be qualified to run an air traffic control for a particular space. So, it's going to be growing pains for a while, but, we need to make the investments and improve things.
The city of Alpharetta greenlit a $150,000 study to determine if an arena could be built in the area of North Point Mall. Now, the study is expected to take 5 to 6 months to complete, so we'll wait to hear about that. Also competing with that is a proposal in Forsyth County for a mega mixed-use arena called The Gathering. Earlier this month, Vernon Cruz, the man behind the proposal for the city of Cumming, told 11Alive's Maria Martin the next step is to meet with Commissioner Gary Bettman, and last week, the commissioner touched on how different the Metro is positioned this time around for a third team in our area.
I think it's a different place than when the Flames and the Thrashers left in terms of how big the city is, how robust it is, the sporting interest. I don't think the prior two visits have any bearing on whether or not we would go back if all the other pieces that I referred to were put together.
Could it happen? Could it happen? Well, here to give us more perspective on it is Andrea Worthy. She's the Economic Development Director for the City of Smyrna. She previously had the same position in Sandy Springs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, bringing a pro hockey team to the suburbs isn't an easy thing, right? Talk about why some communities are trying to shoot so high at this.
I think, frankly, because of the potential impact. You see examples of this all around Metro Atlanta, right here in the Smyrna's backyard, the Brave Stadium. That's been a huge win. So I think a lot of communities are very interested in bringing that type of product to their community.
We understand that Alpharetta now is at the feasibility stage, right? Trying to get this done. Talk to us about what that means. What does all that entail?
What that means, frankly, is a third party that comes in and interviews and tries to figure out what the demand is for the new product. I mean, frankly, a professional hockey team is only going to use the facility for 40 to 41 home games per year. So that leaves a lot of extra space to figure out if there's demand for shows, concerts, community events. So this is really a way for the community to really get a good handle on what type of demand there is, what type of revenue could be generated, and if any type of public subsidy may be needed to make this work.
So much focus on the hockey team itself, but you mentioned all these other things, the concert. Wouldn't you highlight that more, having had 2 professional hockey teams in Atlanta before that didn't quite make it? Why so much the hype on the hockey part?
Oh, that's because sports are sexy. Frankly, that's the issue there. Everybody wants a great sports team. And hey, Metro Atlanta would love to have another professional level sports team here. But to your point, those other things are the things that are really going to help pay for the arena, generate a lot of hotel room nights and people coming to the area. So that's why it's so important to get a good handle on what the demand is for those items.
So far, we got 2 areas vying for position with this, right? We talked about it being sexy. 2 people want it. What's the fight like, and who could potentially come out on top?
Oh, that's a hard speculation. It really sort of depends on exactly what the NHL is looking for in their product. It may be a situation with like the Braves here, where they have a development company, and they may want to, own all the property themselves or something along those lines. So I can't really speculate to that. But I will say that the city of Alpharetta is within Fulton County, which is technically served by MARTA. So just looking at that perspective, it could seem to me that Alpharetta might have a slight leg up in that arena.
You're in Smyrna, right, which is very close to where Truist Park is now. Are there any lessons you learned when the Braves came up to your way?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's completely changed the entire marketplace here. The halo effect from that project has been huge. And there was a lot of controversy, if you remember at the time, about the public subsidy that was involved in that project. But for the past 2 years, the Braves have come back before the county commission and shown that they are actually generating more revenue, property tax revenue and sales tax revenue, than the actual debt obligation. So it's been a fiscal plus for Cobb County, but also just in terms of the halo effect, we see it here in Smyrna. We're across the street from the stadium. The demand from developers looking to be involved in a project right next to the Battery is huge.
Do you think it's possible that another city may try to get in on this fight for a hockey team?
Maybe, but it kind of makes sense from what I've seen from the demand from NHL demand to be in the northern suburbs. Again, that's one of the reasons the Braves, when they relocated from the city of Atlanta, they look to the northern suburbs. That's where their market is, and I think that's true for the hockey fans as well.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll wait and see. I mean, first we had the Flames, then the Thrashers. Any ideas on what the name of the team might be?
No, but my husband is originally from Chicago, and he is dying for a hockey team to be back here in the metro Atlanta area. So I think there'll be lots of demand, but I have no idea what a great name would be.
You're absolutely right when it comes to sports teams, and that would be the sexier side of it, but certainly the concerts would be huge. I did get a chance briefly when I first got here to see the Thrashers, so I think it would be cool to see.
I think it would be cool as well. I think it would be very cool. Count me in for being one of the first people to line up in whatever location it could land.
There you go. All right, maybe Smyrna. No, I'm kidding. And a new book suggesting aids for former President Joe Biden, debating putting him in a wheelchair if he won a second term. The book, titled Original Sin, is co-authored by CNN's Jape Tapper. The book says Biden's physical deterioration had become severe in the second half of his presidency, most apparent in his walk. It also reports that the former president began forgetting names, staring blankly at people he'd known for more than a decade, and became disoriented and incoherent when he was fatigued. CNN has attributed a statement from a Biden spokesman saying, quote, "We continue to await anything that shows where Joe Biden had to make a presidential decision or national security was threatened or where he was unable to do his job. In fact, the evidence points to the opposite. He was very effective as a president." Joining us now for more insight on this is Andrea Gillespie. She's associate professor of political science at Emory University. Andrea, welcome back to the show, first of all.
Thanks for having me.
All right. How have past administrations addressed or failed to address the mental health challenges of presidents?
Well, it's really hard looking back in history to find an example that's entirely like this one. We could go back to the Reagan administration where there were moments of forgetfulness. I think I remember distinctly, like during the Iran-Contra affair, and then people kind of Monday morning quarterbacked his situation when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 6 years after leaving the White House.
But if you actually kind of go back and look over the record, his doctors were giving him a clean bill of health. And there weren't a whole lot of, sort of public challenges to his mental acuity. So that's probably the closest kind of thing that we can say that would be analogous to the situation that we're talking about here. We can talk about other presidents having been incapacitated in the past. So in particular, Woodrow Wilson suffered a stroke during his second term as presidency. And so for a lot of his final 2 years in office, he really was incapacitated. And his wife actually hid his situation, kept him in bed and, made sure that she was the gatekeeper of all presidential information. So a lot of historians actually look at Edith Wilson as being an activist first lady who actually did take on, a policy-making role in an informal way. We really haven't had to deal with this situation. The 25th Amendment of the Constitution does have a clause after the succession plan that's outlined in Section 1, which says that the vice president takes over if the president is dead or can't perform his duties as president, that says that a majority of the cabinet would have to get together and tell Congress, hey, the president, is incapacitated and cannot serve in this office. And then that way you can remove the president from power and then have the vice president take over. So aside from the constitutional provision that is there to provide for a situation like this, we've never seen it activated.
Wow. So what ways do you think mental health of a president affects the moral and the well-being of our nation?
Well, we can look at the 2024 election cycle where there were lots of rumors circulating about Joe Biden's mental acuity. And this is something that Donald Trump certainly used to his advantage in terms of attacking the administration. And you can see the evidence of that in that debate on CNN last June that, many prove was disastrous and that a lot of people say, was used to push Joe Biden out of the race as an example of people stepping up and telling President Biden that he could no longer run for office. So often this has to be done kind of informally, kind of in the public shaming type of scenario than necessarily executing Article 25 to remove a president from power. I think if you look at the excitement around Kamala Harris's sort of announcement that she was, going to replace Biden as the Democratic nominee is evidence of the fact that there were a lot of Democratic voters who were opposed to Joe Biden because they were concerned about whether or not he was fit to serve a second term in office. And so part of that initial bump, I think, was a reaction to having somebody who was younger and whose mental acuity was not in question.
Do you think, in lieu of this book coming out, what we're learning now will change that policy going forward, or do you think we keep what we have in place?
It's very likely that we're going to continue to use the 25th Amendment as a stopgap. It's doubtful that we'd see it be used in our lifetime. There are people who have talked about using these tests. Nikki Haley suggested it on the campaign trail when she was running against Donald Trump. But I think that there is going to be a hesitancy to use it. First of all, you don't want to engage in ageism. Just not every 80-year-old, is mentally incapacitated from being able to run for office. I think it also raises questions, not just about mental acuity, but about mental stability. And I think that that's actually also dicey and political. And people will say that charges about somebody being mentally unstable are actually politically motivated and not necessarily grounded in science and in any actuality. The tough thing about mental acuity is that the tests that doctors sometimes use sometimes might not pick up on the things that people in the media may want them to pick up on until years later. And so it doesn't mean that there wasn't a decline, as was the case with President Reagan. It's just that the tests really were not picking this up in a way that's diagnosable. And I'll leave that to the medical professionals to be able to kind of delineate, when for sure that somebody is in a state of mental decline.
Getting ready for a new baby is emotional, it's exciting, and expensive. And lately, some parents are seeing a surprising surge in prices for essential baby gear. So what's behind the spike, and could it be putting safety at risk? Joining us now is 11Alive consumer investigative reporter Liza Lucas. You've been talking with experts behind some of these numbers and the growing concern, right?
That is exactly right, Chesley. I know we have to rewind several years. Your kids are grown, but if you are expecting a baby or shopping for baby gear, you have probably noticed prices for essentials like car seats and strollers are way up in some cases. And yes, tariffs tie into the hike. It's estimated that 90%, Chesley, of baby products are made in Asia, most of them in China. So when tariffs hit that 145% threshold on Chinese imports, the impact on families happened really fast.
Wow. Yeah. So what kind of prices are we talking about here, Liza? Is it really that expensive?
Well, we really are seeing a range here, and big companies have been trying to warn shoppers this was coming. There are a lot lot of posts on various company pages about it, but in the past few weeks, 11Alive has seen prices jump $20 on some items, and on others, we've seen hundreds of dollars when we talk about a hike. And remember, car seats and strollers, they are already considered big ticket items. So with this tax tacked on, it is significant.
Wow. So you spoke with both local business owners and for nonprofits also about this increase. How are they finding that families are coping with these price increases?
Well, both say that this has put a lot of stress on families. Remember, this is supposed to be a really happy time, an expectant time, excitement, but instead there's financial strain here. And businesses in particular, they are having a hard time planning. In fact, I spoke with the owner of Happy Mango Boutique. You just saw her there. She says some of her best-selling items just aren't in stock. She says some companies aren't able to afford that extra cost of bringing items into the U.S. with the tariff added.
All right. There's also been talks about trade negotiations this week and that temporary 90-day tariff pause. Did that provide some relief?
Well, that's a big question, and I think everyone is hopeful that prices could come back down. Again, we're talking about a 90-day pause here, so a lot of uncertainty. But the products that already came in under those heavy tariffs, they're still on the shelves at those high prices, and experts warn this whole situation could push parents to find less expensive options that may be riskier. We're talking about unsafe, used, or knockoff car seats. Take a listen.
With safety items, it really becomes problematic because, as we know, if you need something and you can't get it, you're going to find a way to get it. So that leads to people buying used car seats, which are not always safe. And unfortunately, there is a plethora of fake car seats on the market. So they're going now to get something that's cheaper because, again, the car seat that was on their registry that's $349 is now $599 and no longer affordable.
Now, I reached out to a trade group who's been fighting for an exemption to these tariffs. It did note the reporting from last week that the White House could be considering excluding baby gear from the tariffs, but as of now, there's no official exemption in place. Take a look at their statement in part. The Juvenile Products Manufacturer Association tells me that the drop in the tariff rate for Chinese imports as of right now is a move in the right direction, but the group is continuing to ask for a broad exemption of baby and children's products from tariffs. The group basically says that would ensure these essential products, stay affordable and in stock.
All right, Larsa, thanks a lot. You know, you mentioned I have grown kids, but I do know a lot of people who have baby showers I got to buy gifts for. So
do it early. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to have to stock up right now. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. You know, AAA has projected that more than 45 million Americans will be traveling for Memorial Day holiday weekend. That also includes the 39 million that will be traveling by car. That's why GDOT is working so hard to get those main roads paved up, get them all nice and shiny and new for you so you can travel nice and smooth. Here joining us now is GDOT spokesperson Natalie Dale, our good friend. Welcome back to the show, Natalie.
Thank you. I am so glad that you consider major resurfacing fun. That's how we're going to start off this Friday morning. It is fun. It is one of the biggest complaints we get. So we've got a lot of resurfacing coming for y'all.
Well, how do you pick the roads that you're going to resurface, especially for this time of year?
Well, we have sort of a Metro Atlanta-wide resurfacing agenda this summer. Sometimes roads just are ready for it. There is like a life cycle of roads, if you will. So depending on how many people drive on the road. So example, downtown connector, probably going to need to be resurfaced more often than others. It's not pleasant when we do it, but because of the daily traffic. So we look at what roads are coming up for their resurfacing cycle and what roads just aren't cutting it anymore. And we know as a city, we have world-class events coming soon. Every day, really, in Atlanta, we have world-class events, but we have things like the World Cup coming, another Super Bowl. So we're going to sort of throw a bigger net, if you will, on Metro Atlanta to resurface pretty much every road that you travel on. Every interstate is getting some new level of resurfacing this summer.
Wow. All right. So how do you minimize the traffic during that time of resurfacing?
So we resurface at nighttime, and so it may not impact everyone, but you should still know before you go, especially in the morning, because we do have 285 corridors, 85, 75, I-20, and some state routes in the city. But in those nighttime hours, we're working hard, shutting down lanes. We've talked recently about the importance of construction zones, bringing your speed down in construction zones, making sure that you're traveling safely and attentively. That can be harder at night when you don't have that daylight hour. So we try to minimize our impact by resurfacing in the nighttime hours, only closing down the lanes we're working on. But hear this, The city of Atlanta is also resurfacing this summer because we're all gearing up for these major events.
Right.
They resurface during the day. So it is likely that sometime this summer in the city of Atlanta, you're going to have 24/7 round the clock resurfacing, whether they're resurfacing in the day with the city of Atlanta or night with GDOT. We just have a lot of work to do to get our roads back to world-class status.
That's why I'm trying to make it a happy time, because I know traffic is going to be really hectic around here. How are you guys gearing up for Memorial Day? Well,
as always, we're going to have those traffic closures, pull what we can of construction zones noon next Friday. So noon next Friday, any construction in the state of Georgia, we're going to go ahead and pull those lane closures where we can to make your ride easier. But as you know, we're talking now, we've got a lot of stuff going on. And if that lane if we're resurfacing a lane, for example, and we've worked on it and it's not ready to be open, it will still remain closed. So 511, last week we talked about the importance of 511, the 511 center. Make sure you get that app on your phone. Just check where you're traveling before you go. There is so much knowledge in our fingertips these days that after you buckle your belt, but before you start your car, just do a quick check. Of course, check with 11 to make sure that we're getting the traffic news first from us, from y'all. So there's so much information. Just make sure you're gathering it all before you make that choice on your commute or on your Memorial Day plans.
Let me ask you, how long of a summer project is this going to be? Or will we be doing this? You mentioned those major events that's coming through. How long will it take?
Well, summer technically lasts well into September, almost
Absolutely.
October. So we'll be out there. Again, we have so much to do. And based on the feedback that we've gotten from many people who just travel through the state or it's their daily commute, there are areas of our interstates that are just not cutting it. I drive them too. No one loves a pothole. Sometimes these big projects like Transform 285-400 can be something that changes your daily commute by 10 or 15 minutes. And those are great. They take years to build. But if you're still hitting that pothole, how great is your commute? That's our goal, is to get all these potholes, to get all these areas that are worn down. And it is a lot. And because we're out there, we're going to do it all. So it's going to take us well into almost the fall, weather permitting.
I got you. It'll be Falcon season by then. Yeah, it'll be Falcon season by then. We'll have something else to talk about by then. Natalie, always appreciate you being on the show. Make sure you have a good weekend, all right? Well, we kind of knew this was going to happen, right? AI is taking over our lives, making simple those menial tasks. That's what it was intended for us to do. But now it's starting to move into our dating lives, folks. Increasingly, people are finding it difficult to come up with the right words to say. And so they're turning to apps like ChatGPT to create opening lines and flirting phrases to make an impression. Although this may be helpful to break the ice or make you stand out in a crowded online dating scene, it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable practice. I wouldn't get used to this, folks. At some point, you're going to have to stand face to face before your date. And unless you plan to have a face-to-face conversation through your phone, it's not going to help you out. In other words, at some point, you got to get real in your relationship, folks. It's an app, right? It may be intelligent, but it's certainly artificial. People can't accept the real you. Maybe they're not worth your time. That's all we have for you today. Make it a great day, folks, and try to encourage someone to stay real.